Welcome back to the Under the Hood channel. This is part 4 of the tenure series. In this part, I'm going to briefly talk about my tips for getting evaluated for tenure when it comes to your research portfolio. So thank you for sticking around for the first 4 parts. So I'll jump right in with some strategies for building a solid research portfolio for tenure. So one of the most important aspects of your tenure case is ensuring that your work as an assistant professor is independent of any previous research advisors. This is super important for tenure evaluations. Evaluators truly want to see, and they want us as the candidates to prove that we are leading our own work. They want to make sure that our own trainees are also contributing and leading that work. So for reference, there are some obvious characteristics of research outputs that signify independence. Those are going to include being the last and or the corresponding author on a research paper. So this can be field specific. Sometimes they'll want you to be the sole author in your field. So just go based on the standards for your field. Being the sole investigator on a research grant also helps signify that you're conducting independent research. That's why early career grants are great indicators, but not the only indicators of building a solid research portfolio. So being a sole investigator ensures that you're probably the only one doing the work and that your previous advisors probably have little to do with the work's success. An additional point that proves your independence is that your PhD trainee is doing the work. Okay, this is because you are responsible for that person's funding and their successful matriculation through the PhD program. And finally, if your work diverges from the work that you did before entering the tenure track, that is also a clear indicator that you've branched out independently of your advisors. And while this is a higher risk strategy, it sends a pretty clear message to your reviewers that you're doing the research independently. I do want to go under the hood just for a second. Unfortunately, for women and faculty of color, sometimes deciding who gets the credit as the lead of the research project comes into question when you're collaborating with someone who is more well known or who has an identity that is within the majority in your research field. So, in all transparency, I was told at my mid-career evaluation, so at the end of year 4, that I needed to focus less on collaborative work and focus more on work that was led specifically by me and my students. So, in all honesty, this was a very difficult transition because I had to learn how to say no to requests to participate in other people's work. I used the mid-career evaluation as a fallback to support my decision to say no, and people largely understood. I briefly discussed some of these challenges in the early career catch-22 video, and the thumbnail is on the screen, and I will also link a card. So be sure to have a look at this video if you are within the first few years of your tenure track position. So as a tactical strategy, I set up my lab to conduct research under 4 different thrusts that I consider to be quite diverse within the field of air pollution engineering. The last thrust number 4, is emerging, so some of those themes have evolved over the last 7 years, and that's totally okay. I took on projects that fell within the themes that you see on the screen. I was very intentional about choosing those projects and making sure that they led back to the overall mission of the lab. Thrusts numbers 1, 3, and 4 are what I consider to be the diverging aspects of the lab. The work that diverges from the research that I did as a graduate student and as a postdoc. And if you go to my website, you will see that about 40% of my independent research as a pre-tenure assistant professor falls into track number 2. So honestly, research is probably the least obscure part of the tenure evaluation. Many of us know how to conduct strong research and we work hard. So I'm going to use the last part of this video to talk about the tips that I don't usually hear people talking about much when it comes to building a strong pre-tenure portfolio. Number 1, get your work funded. So convincing a panel of your peers that your work is worth funding is sometimes a surefire way to signify that your work is important. Granted, some of the most brilliant ideas never get funded. Check out the Nobel Prize winners of late. But demonstrating a strong record of fundraising signifies your ability to sustain a research program independently, which is one of the areas of evaluation for tenure. Number 2, I would also make sure to have some lower risk research in your pre-tenure portfolio. So much like a financial portfolio, you want to make sure that some of the topics that you're working on are guaranteed to lead to published papers, which are also a really important part of your research evaluation. This could mean you are building on or improving some of the established science and engineering in your field. Number 3, be open to incorporating your students' ideas into your research plan. Believe it or not, they are excellent thinkers, just like us. We need to be taking advantage of their fresh perspectives. We also need to publicly give them the credit for being the intellectual leads for this work as well. So this is also achieved by encouraging your students to apply for external fellowships, which will foster their ideas and help support their independent thinking as well. Number 4, follow your heart. So some of the advice that I always give younger scholars that ask me what I think they should be working on, I always tell them to work on the problems that keep them up at night. Okay, so whether or not these problems are viewed as important by the majority, it doesn't matter. More often than not, if a problem hasn't hit the mainstream yet, you've likely discovered a niche area where you can have an advantage and a head start in working on the issue. And I believe my colleagues and I have done this such thing when it comes to community engaged research in environmental engineering. And this leads me to my last point, which is your diversity is your strength, regardless what anybody says. In all my years in higher education and working in research, what I have seen with my 2 eyes is that people with diverse identities bring unique perspectives to research. Once again, this creates a niche for their research portfolios. Neurodivergence, ethnic and cultural differences, or growing up in a less researched background. That's going to allow the researcher to bring a unique lens to their research. And most likely, people with these diverse backgrounds have encountered life challenges and they've seen issues that need urgent solutions that could benefit millions of people. So please, once again, always see your diverse viewpoints as a strength in your research. If there's anything that I didn't cover or I didn't touch well, please feel free to drop a comment in the chat and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So in summary, in your research portfolio, you're combining your technical training with your real life experiences, which really shapes the problems that you want to work on as a tenure track faculty. Overall, you should always consult a trusted mentor in your department, your chair, or someone outside of your institution that's in your field to get some tips on what they consider to be the strengths and weaknesses in your field when it comes to being evaluated for tenure. At this time, I'd like to thank you very much for watching part 4 of the tenure series, and I will see you in the next video.